Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the last EVE Talk before the December patch. It is announced that that one will release next week on the 11th and it's looking like a pretty good patch to me. First of all, we of course have the changes to the war deck mechanics, which I think is going to help the game in general, because we know now from numbers from the CSM minutes that new players, whenever they get war decked, it's all too often the case that they just don't log in during the war because perhaps their first ship got blown up, or they hear from other players that, well, just avoid the fight is the best way to go, and then they tend to never come back. So CCP is changing that so that only corporations that have a structuring space will be eligible to war decks. That makes a lot of sense. If you can get to that stage, you usually have at least a bit of an idea on how to handle the war. You've got some reserves, you know not to fly what you can't afford to lose. And so I think it's a great change, and I think it's going to help the game and the retention for newer players as well. Another interesting thing for the patch is going to be the gifts, of course. Those should start on that day as well, and we'll get, well, gifts throughout, I think, the 2 weeks towards Christmas, and so I think it's just going to be redeemable items, but it's always nice to receive gifts, of course. I think I'm going to try to redeem these straight to Jita this time, because that's where I tend to also keep all of those little extras that we get from CCP over the course of the years of playing the game. And then what I'm really looking forward to is actually the event. So there's also going to be a new event like 1 week after the patch hits, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty unique one where we'll have to like fly really close to planets. So must be in very interesting places, I think, very close to the atmosphere. So that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to, and if I find the time, perhaps I'll take a look on CC as well to see what that event is all about. But yeah, December and holidays do look like they'll be pretty fun to go through, although nothing too major either. We will get new Triclavian ships like the logistics cruisers there, but overall, of course, this is you know, a decently small patch. I think that CCP is quite busy with all the holiday stuff and well, the rest of the development, that's for the longer term, although I'm always curious about that as well, of course. So as always, we'll start with a quick look at the New Eden store here. No sales visible here. We do have some hot items and some bundles. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put this on price ascending for once, just to take a look at some of the cheaper items. And some of the things that I find to be pretty cool is right here. We've got less than 200 plex, well, let's call it 200 plex, let's be fair here, for this strategic cruiser skin bundle. Yeah, the Legion one looks okay. The Loki, you know, maybe the least good looking one, but you know, the gray blackish within the red, I think it meshes really well. And then the Proteus one, if you like the more vibrant colors, which I think fits for the Galente, blue and yellow, I think is a very nice combination. But then that Tengu Nightfire skin, I think that that one looks absolutely amazing. So on the cheaper bundle side, that one does look pretty interesting. If we then go down a little bit, you've got some pretty cheap apparel, but then what I noticed here are some of these 55 plex skins, so definitely pretty cheap. And the Ghostbird skins, actually, I like the look of them. White, black, and then some red borders. I think that these look really great. Eagle Ghostbird skin, look at that. I think that looks pretty amazing. Same with the Drake. And then you've got a couple other ones that I really like here this Hulk skin, the Hurricane skin, I think it looks really great. That Manticore skin, look at that, 55 plex for what is, in my opinion, a really awesome looking Ghostbird skin. Lots of black there, but I like that on this Manticore skin. And another one that I noticed here, Proteus Skyliner skin, really dark, but I think it's got a nice vibe. And then that Tengu Nightfire skin is only 55 plex as well. So I think that there are some pretty cheap options here in the store, and I personally do think that these look really good. Look at that Jackdaw skin. I mean, we've got this amazing animated skin, but there's something completely different with all the white and red. I think that these are actually really great options for not a lot of plex or not a lot of ISK. I think you'll find these decently cheaply on the market as well. Now, to be honest, I would not be purchasing in the store right now because, well, the holidays are coming, and I personally do expect some sales to happen closer to the holidays. So there are some definitely nice looking cheap skins out there, but right now I would you know, save my wallet for the holidays. Let's move on to the market itself then. That's why we are here, of course. And as always, we'll start with some plex and stuff. That's going to be at 505. So like that, let's get started here with plex themselves. A little bit of hesitation here after the sale. We see the massive increase in volumes and then the decrease in price, landing at the 3.1 million mark, pretty close to that at least. And now we've got like a little bit of hesitation here at the tail end. In JITA itself, 3.25 million, 3.23 million for the sellers, 3.12 million, so just above 3.1 million for the buyers. But if you look at the player-owned trade hubs, look at that, 317, so that's very close to the buyers of JITA here, and that's definitely a bit more margin between sellers and buyers from JITA 4.4 and the player-owned trade hubs, which is now the perimeter trademark. I think it's the Excel Citadel there, the Keep Star. I'm not exactly sure. I might have to take a look at that one at some point, if it can maintain itself, and if it does, I do think it will be able to take over a large portion of the market. Might be interesting to go and take a look at that trade hub, at that trade market here. And then for the buyers, 313, so that margin is definitely closing, which on this pattern is usually a sign that we're landing at the bottom here, forming a bottom at about 3.1 million. I do fully expect myself that, especially if the event is successful and then CCP can actually bring out some nice announcements for the future as well, that will start to have some inflationary impacts, more people playing the game, more demand for plex, and thus increase in prices. I'm not sure if we'll beat the high point here of around 3.3 million, but the potential definitely exists. We can see that last year, just before January, we peaked at more than 3.4 million. So that is something I think to keep an eye out for now. If CCP doesn't clobber us with plex sales, that might decrease the price even more. Then I do think that we'll be back on the upswing starting next week. Holidays, people coming back might bring in more demand, and that's when we should start looking for those peak prices. December, January, that's usually, you can see that from the pattern last year, where it tends to happen. And so if you want to have a nice sale of some plex, you want some liquid risk, that's of course the time to do so. Next up, we have the multiple pilot trading certificate, same pattern here, and a bit of a recovery of the price already. So we have this massive increase in volumes, the decrease in price, of course. That is the CCP Plex sale, where people actually pony up their cash, bring that to the market, and then lots of that finds its way to the market itself and starts transferring ISK from player to player. But you can see here the bounce back is quite volatile. We're heading back to 1.2 billion, 1.15 billion for the seller, and 1.123 billion for the buyers. So the buyers are pushing up again, the sellers are moving up, but the margin remains pretty small. So that's usually a bottom formation, but you can see that we went a lot lower. So this to me gives a bit of support to my theory that plex are bound to go back up unless CCP hits us with more sales on plex itself. And here you can see that the price of multiple pilot trading certificate is already back up. And so that peak here, which coincides with that top here for plex, is not something completely crazy. It's not a top that the market can't handle. It's basically something that we will hit again at some point, in my opinion. Next up, we have the skill injectors. We'll start, we usually start with the skill extractors here, just to show the same pattern as plex, of course. Get the decrease in price, the increased volumes. So that's the CCP sale. Now we have the bottom forming. Sellers are coming in at 356.5 million. Buyers are coming in at 335 million. Actually a bit more margin than I thought we'd be much closer here, like 345, something like that for the buyers. But they have a bit more of a wait-and-see approach to these skill extractors, and as a result we've got a little bit of hesitation here. That's the exact opposite of what I was expecting. If we would have seen skill extractors actually start to move up, just like the multiple pilot trading certificates, or form a very clear bottom with a very narrow margin like plex, then my theory would hold up. But here, skill extractors might actually go either way because of that lower demand price, which is right here at 335. That's even right here on the chart. So yeah, be a bit careful. This could still swing either way because of what skill extractors is showing us. Next up, we have the injectors here, or the large scale injectors, and those of course are peaking nicely. Now, as we know, there tends to be a bit of a delay between plex changes and then the injector changes. And so now with plex having done that pullback and forming this bottom, I personally do think that this is a nice sell opportunity. If you bought these large scale injectors for around 700 million ISK, you're now selling them for 792. That's a nice more than 10% profit right there. 773 for the buyers. Even if you're impatient and you sell here, it's a nice 10% increase in price. And you can see the hesitation on the chart as well a little bit. If the plex sale pushes through a little bit, same with the multiple pilot trading certificate, we might actually see an end to that increase in price. And so this seems to me like the right time to be selling your large scale injectors. Small scale injectors also tended to be a little bit more let's say twitchy, a little bit more reactive to what happens with plex. When plex started to rise again, you saw that here the hesitation in the market started to show up. For the large scale injector, it was much flatter, but that also means that it might be a bit of the canary in the coal mine and shows exactly what I was expecting. Here's the 5-day moving average starting to move flat at the current price range, so don't expect that to break out to a new 1-year high or anything like that. Because of the sales, I don't think it's happening. 160 million for the sellers, 151 for the buyers. I think if you made these investments September, October for whether it's small or large scale injectors, that this is the right time to take your profits. And then finally we have the daily alpha injector that did drop off quite a lot, obviously also on a sale now. Look at that volume spike. That is not normal market behavior. That is CCP intervening. And now here the daily alpha injectors are trying to recover a little bit, but they're still all over the place. So they are selling for 53.3 million. Buyers are coming in at 49.7 million. So you're still purchasing these for less than 50 million. I would say if you're looking for the investment in this category, daily alpha injectors, just don't go crazy with the volumes. Know that about 500 a day get traded, and thus decide on volumes depending on that. Don't buy 10,000 of them is what I'm trying to say right here. But yeah, these look to be in a very interesting place considering the entire chart, considering what's happening at the moment with the plex prices itself. I think they're bound to go back up, and here we have close to 1-year low prices, especially on the buy orders. So this is your time to try and snag some daily alpha injectors. Next up we have the minerals coming in at 12.30. Like that, and my notebook is not in the right spot, so let's make a bit more room. There we go. As always, we are going to start here with titanium, and it's not good news. The little uptick here last week looked really good. If we could get to 5 ISK, we'd be back on the average. It would be back to an okay price to sell, but unfortunately any increase in price does mean that some stocks come alive and they try to take advantage of those higher prices. As a result, we are going back down for 4.5 ISK here. In fact, sellers are coming in at 440, 442. No, actually should put up the filter here. 442 for the sellers, buyers coming in at 436, and the problem is 1.4 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion, another 1.4 billion. Bring the price down from 446 to 442. You can see that there's still massive stocks, massive volumes out there that are primed to be put on the market whenever the price just jumps up a couple of cents. As a result, we have this decreased price again hitting that 1-year low point. 4.5 ISK is in play yet again. Let's hope it doesn't break, because if it does, and unless there is like a winter war or something like that, I personally think that it will at some point, then I do think that we might start to move in a 4 to 4.5 ISK price band, which would be, well, definitely less than average, pretty low price. But that's the general trend. Here is pyrite. Look at that, 1-year low point heading for 3 ISK now. 315 for the first seller, and then he comes in with 1.2 billion units. So it's just gonna keep that price at this new 1-year low point, and yep, that just to me means that I'm not gonna start purchasing despite what I'm seeing on this chart right here. I'm just going to keep whatever I mine. You know, pyrite is just getting piled up if I do mine any of it, but I'm not going to sell or not going to start purchasing at this price point, because this shows a billion units here, a billion units here, that there is still so much out there that unless something really drastic happens where CCP intervenes, this is just the state of mining at the moment. 3 ISK for the buyers, trying to reach that 1-year low point yet again. Next up we have Mixelon, and here we get a little bit of a rebound as well, but a very shy one, staying below 60 ISK I think. 57.7 for the sellers, 55.13 for the buyers. Definitely a below average price. Here you would probably want to do the calculations. If you're not mining from an active moon in HiSig, but you're actively mining just regular HiSig minerals, do the calculations. How much ISK per hour is Mixelon at this price? How much is pyrite? It's going to be terrible. How much is titanium? And then just look for the best source. If you need that ISK from your mining, well, you've got little choice, and I do think Mixelon will still be the best one, but it's definitely not great. It's been a lot better throughout the year when you could sell it for around 70. Next up we've got Isogen, landing at 15 ISK, but definitely staying in this price range. 15.58 for the sellers, 14.92 for the buyers, and here we still have at 16 ISK that 30 million, 20 million, 40 million units, and then the latest one is still 15 million units. So you can clearly tell that there's just way more being mined than used in the economy at the moment. For Noxium, that managed to hold on to 300 ISK and is still doing so, bouncing back up a little bit, right above 300 ISK, very respectable. 310 almost for the sellers, 296.5 for the buyers. An okay margin between these two, even nothing too crazy. And perhaps Noxium could actually be your best ISK per hour, seeing that Mixelon is now dropping to a 1-year low point. Noxium has actually held on quite nicely. It's something to consider. Perhaps you should look into mining some Noxium rather than Mixelon, which has been the case for most of the year. You should always have focused on Mixelon with these prices. Everything else was just down together. But now Noxium is actually holding on to 300 ISK, and as long as it does so, I honestly think that it might be competing with Mixelon at the current prices. Next up we have Zydrine, a little bit of a bounce here, very interesting. After reaching and breaking 400 ISK for a couple of days, we are back up. It's currently selling for 447 ISK, buyers coming in at 429.7, so 430. That is interesting. A little bit of hesitation here in the market to go even lower, but Megasite I think, also same bounce. Okay, very interesting. So the Nullsic minerals, or former Nullsic minerals here, Zydrine and Megasite, bumping off of their lower price points. The weird thing is, of course, we've got Zydrine bumping off of 400 ISK, and that should be lower than Megasite, because Megasite has historically always been more expensive, and so Megasite here bouncing off of 375. If I would be buying any minerals, perhaps it would be this. It would be some Megasite and some Zydrine if they again reach like a 1-year low point and get close to 400 ISK for Zydrine, 275 for Megasite. Perhaps a small investment there would make sense, but generally speaking at the moment for minerals, I'm not feeling it, except for potentially more fights, because that one is tied to the Tech 2 economy. It is a little bit different. You can see the volatile spikes that still occurred last year, and they were pretty damn good. At the moment it's selling for less than 8,000 ISK, buyers coming in at 7,666 ISK. So that is really cheap, and look at the potentials here, 11k. That is a really nice percentage profit between these two. And I'm seeing more of that potential happening in a war than for minerals, where, well, all you need here for Morphite is basically some stealth bomber fleets, some logistics fleets to get bombed away, to need to be replaced in short order, and you've got a nice Morphite spike. For the other minerals, what you need here is capital and super capital destruction, especially super capital destruction. And you can tell that, Megasite here throughout the year, nothing too major. Mixelon new couple of spikes here and there, but also not as pronounced, and especially percentage wise. Titanium just one big spike and that's it. And yeah, you're dependent on the destruction of the very largest chips and structures in the game, which doesn't happen that often. Whereas Tech 2 destruction, yeah, those fleets get regularly flown and blown up, and as a result there you've got this Morphite potential, in my opinion. So yeah, if I would make a purchase myself, it would be a buy order for Morphite. In fact, I think I'm going to fly over to GTA and do that, like 7,700 ISK, that's below this entire chart. That makes a lot of sense to try and grab some Morphite at that price range. So next up we have PI coming in at 9 1435. Like that. And yeah, let's go over these as well. So we've got broadcast nodes that made a bit of a comeback back to an average price of slightly above 2.1 million, currently selling for slightly above 2.1 million, buyers at 2 million. That's around an average normal price. Construction blocks, which I've been trying to buy for less than 10k, sometimes the average price still plays with that, so my buy order is still up, but it's trying to get back to an average price. Yeah, 12k, 11 to 12k, close to 12k I think is the normal price. So we're talking currently 11,100 is for the sellers, 10,600 for the buyers, is slightly below average price for construction blocks. But the buy opportunity, that hasn't worked out just yet for me personally. Consumer electronics also on its way back up a little bit. This one data point is kind of strange at almost 15,000, so unless someone bought everything out, I don't think that's a range. No, 13,100 for the sellers, 12,100 for the buyers. Around here on the chart, slightly below average yet again. Coolants next, we know that that one was doing really well and is still holding on. A little bit of pressure at the tail end, so we're definitely dropping below 11,000 ISK on average at this point, but still holding very, very nicely. 10,900 for most sellers, 10,700 for the first one, but 10,600 for the buyers. Very good price, well above average. Really great to see. Enriched uranium, ooh, a bit of a breakdown here. Went up to 1 year high point though, 14,000 ISK. The market can't maintain that indefinitely. Of course, at some point people are gonna start to look at that and say, I'm just gonna switch a couple of planets to enriched uranium. You see a bit more supply coming in, and so now we are back down to 13,000 ISK on average, 13,500 for the first seller. Most of them still at 14k, and then we get 13,200 for the buyers here. So a bit of pressure. I think it's fresh supply coming in, seeing as we have these 1 year high prices for about a month now. There is at some point going to be some production reaction as well, and here we can see that that will probably start to drop the price a little bit. Integrity response drones back up after some volatility. So this was the expansion with the new structures in nullsec. Less than what I personally expected. I thought we would definitely break above the average, reach like 3.5 million. That didn't happen, but so my theory is that people over speculated a little bit as well, and so we had too much dumping on the peak here. As a result, we went back down to 2.2 million, and now we are finally recovering back to a more normal price. Well, 2.8, yeah, 2.9 million almost. That's actually a bit more than I expected yet again, and then 2.6 million for the buyers. So a bit of a spike actually to an above average price in my opinion. Next up we have the mechanical parts dropping back. Oh, that's actually a bit of a trend break all of a sudden. We managed to maintain 11 to 12k for the last 3-4 months or so, but now we're definitely below 11,000 ISK. 11,000 pretty much for the sellers, but 10,300 for the buyers. That's a bit of pressure here. And perhaps we could see the first trend break in the fuel related PI materials here. Moving back, it's still a bit above average, but moving back towards that 10,000 ISK average range for the year, I would say. Nuclear reactors dropping quite sharply all of a sudden to close to 1 year low point, 83,000 ISK. I think I put a buy order for that. Nuclear reactors, yeah, I bought for 87.5k. I think it's only the Hound that I didn't pick up, and one more thing, yeah, the construction blocks. Everything else in the ticker, I checked it yesterday, all of those buy orders actually went through, so I have those construction blocks at less than 90,000 ISK, but right now selling for 90,000 ISK, buyers at 81,000 ISK. Look at the lack of buyers for nuclear reactors. This is definitely another buy opportunity here in my opinion, and look at the potentials here. 110,000, even 120,000 is easily possible, and you're now buying those close to 81,000 ISK. That's like a 50% increase if you can reach 120k. So very, very interesting, that lack of demand here all of a sudden creating a nice sharp drop off close to 1 year low point. On this way down, I picked up my buy order that is below 90k, which was okay for me personally, but now I might actually put up a second buy order, try to lower my average price even more, and try to take a profit on this potential downtrend here, which has quite a bit of volatility, and it just seems to be complete lack of demand, and at some point, in my opinion, that will come back. Next up, we have the organic mortar applicators moving back up a little bit in the last week, a bit above average maybe. 1.2 million for the sellers, 1.1 million for the buyers. Yep, sellers slightly above average, buyers on the average, but not by too much. Robotics also, another one that seems to be telling us that the great times for fuel-related PI materials might be over. So coolants, this might be your final few weeks where you can really sell those at this premium price, because we are now breaking 95,000 ISK on the downtrend. First seller coming in at that price, most of them at 98,000, but the buyers are down to 90,500. And this will be pretty interesting, in my opinion, to keep an eye out for the reaction of fuel blocks, which are also clearly under pressure at the moment. Next up, you have self-harmonizing power cores continuing to meander around the average, but at the moment I think a little bit below that. 2.1 million for the sellers, less than 2 million for the buyers. Sellers a touch below average, buyers a little bit below average as well, of course. Superconductors next, a bit of volatility here, and I actually went in to sell a few of them at one of these peaks. 13,500 for most sellers, 13,200 for the first one, and then 12,800 for the buyers, where we put that a little bit below, above average, excuse me. Definitely a bit above average at the moment for superconductors. Not the peak, but still a great time to sell. Test cultures, very unexpected peak here all of a sudden, moving from less than 8,000 ISK all of a sudden to 11,500 ISK for the sellers, 9,500 ISK for the buyers. Do I have any of those? Unfortunately not. Yeah, I felt like a risky trade. I think that test cultures usually moves with the advanced PI materials. You can see broadcast nodes peak, you can see integrity response drones peak right here, and then test cultures right there as well, or a little bit after that in fact. And so here now we have a bit of an unexpected peak in test cultures. Great time to sell these, of course. And then finally we have wetware mainframes that just like most advanced PI materials is also meandering around its average. This one is slightly below, I think, actually 2.33 million, a little bit below average, and then the buyers at 2.27 million. Pretty narrow margin between these two. So a little bit of a mixed picture here. We've got coolant still really strong, but if you look at mechanical parts and the robotics, look out for those fuel-related PI materials. These seem to be coming under pressure. Most of these advanced PI materials are either a bit above average or a bit below average. And then we do have that nuclear reactors decrease in price that I like a lot personally. Next up, we have the advanced moon materials coming in at 27.30, let's say. Like that. Let's see here. Crystalline carbonite last week. Not at its bottom price and definitely not breaking out at the moment. So selling for 170 ISK, buyers at 164. That's basically the current normal price range and definitely not an opportunity either for selling or for buying, unfortunately. Ferrite carbide next, also, taking off a little bit, but from 1 year low prices. So we get 174 for the sellers, 165 for the buyers. That's again, it's too late to buy and it's definitely too early to sell. If you did buy, then we have number 3 titanium carbide. Same picture here again. Low point was 150. It's actually already at 200 ISK. So 205 for the sellers, 200 ISK for the buyers. If you did buy, but that's like almost 2 months ago, for 150 or less than that, that's a decent profit. You might want to make that trade, but personally I do think that this might be a little bit early still. And then we've got tungsten carbide that made its way back to 25 and has to give a little bit of ground, but you can see that the bottom for less than 175 is possible. So 208 for the sellers, 204 for the buyers. That's again, in my opinion, too early to sell, but not the right time to buy either. So definitely a pretty similar story finally for all 4 of these, although the tungsten carbide shows a bit more volatility and a much higher bottom at around 175. Next up, we have the metamaterials. Let's start with 1.1 photonic metamaterials. Of course, that does tend to follow very closely. So we've got this slight increase in price around 20k, but here that data point is kind of weird. So let's take a look at it. No, still just below 20,000 isks for the sellers and 18,100 for the buyers. So I think it's basically an early trade here that is a buyer picking up some of these photonic metamaterials from someone that's impatient, but the averages for the day will probably still stay around the 20,000 isk mark here. Next up we have the plasmonic metamaterials that are back under pressure a little bit, but not at a low point just yet. 20,000 for the sellers, 19,400 for the buyers, even less margin than the photonic metamaterials, so that's on the average, I would say. Next up we have non-linear metamaterials bouncing back above 25,000 this time, so slightly above average. 27,000 for the sellers and 27,000 almost for the buyers. Again, very narrow margin here, but on an upswing. Yeah, not enough volatility in my opinion to make good trades in. Terahertz metamaterials, that one is actually breaking out. All right, unexpectedly now all of a sudden the metamaterials are showing differences. We've got one below average, we get one above average, and here we actually have a slight breakout. You could have bought these for 20,000 isk late October, and a little bit above that 20,000 21,000 late November, and now we are selling these for 26,000 isk, buyers coming in at almost 25,000 isk, and if you can be patient enough, perhaps this could break out even higher. Very unexpected, but a slight sell opportunity all of a sudden in the terahertz metamaterials. Is that on my bot? No, unfortunately not. But yeah, very unexpected in my book, seeing as how all the carbonites are basically doing the same thing. All of a sudden we are seeing different things happening in the metamaterials markets. And then we've got the other goods here are the fermionic condensates. After dropping yet again in a pretty sharp drop here to less than 90,000 isk, market recovered a little bit, 91,000 for the sellers and almost 91,000 for the buyers as well. So a buy opportunity is over if you don't want to wait for 80k, the 1 year low point, which I personally do. Next up, we've got the ferrogel, stable, still slightly down. So the pressure is basically from 55k to 45k right now, which is right in the middle of the entire chart. 44,000 for the sellers, 44,000 for the buyers. Super narrow margin yet again. That's kind of weird. Fullerites are actually recovering a little bit, but these did go to 1 year low point, so you could have bought these for 880 isk, selling now for 1,080 isk. Buyers coming in at more than 1,000 isk as well. Now on my ticker, Fullerites, yeah, I made my trade a little bit early here. I bought for 840 and I sold these for 940. I could probably sell them now for 1,000 isk if you held on to your Fullerites there. Next up, you have the hypersynaptic fibers. Same thing here, unfortunately, on the down pressure, but not yet at the 1 year low point. So it's 14,000 for the sellers, which is still actually pretty good. 12,500 for the buyers. That is starting to be pretty low, but we can see that the potential exists for even low prices. So if you bought them, you should definitely look for 11,500, be below that. Then I think you've got a more of a short thing. Nano transmitters, 5,000 isk, and just back below that, but the low point again should be 4k, so 4,800. Yeah, a bit of pressure here, but the buyers are staying at 4,800 as well. So we do have some fresh supply that's trying to drive the price back down, but they need to break the back of these buyers and push these guys down to like 4,500 or something like that before we'll actually see a buy opportunity like here. Then we have the phenolic composites also under pressure. This is starting to look interesting. How close are the buyers to 2,000 isk? 2,240 for the sellers, 2,100 for the buyers. Honestly, if you look at this entire chart and you want to start your phenolic composite investment, have the patience for a buy order below 2,100, but I think it is possible. I think that this is the third leg down, and on another one, you're definitely grabbing some pretty cheap ones. And then finally, we have the ceramic fibers that after diving to 1 year low point is still now back to an average price, trying to hold on to that. Bit of pressure at the tail end, 516 for the sellers, 492 for the buyers. So the advanced move materials, I must say, it's starting to be interesting because, well, partly because I'm also trying from time to time to make one of these trades myself. And the one difficult thing I would say is that we do see this landing on like 45k, but we see from last year that actual bottom prices can be a lot lower than this, and so it's always a bit tricky to actually pull the trigger on a buy opportunity unless something really pronounced happened, like here, the nanotransmitter dip. I think the phenolic composite dip starts to look like it has that potential, in my opinion. And then we had one other one, like here, the fullerenes as well, which is a trade that I make when we actually reached that 1 year low point. I think that's a very important one to keep in mind as well. Next up, the Tech 2 ships coming in at 34.55. Like that. Let's go over these. Perhaps, you know, I'm definitely taking a look at my ticker here from time to time as well. And I did not manage to buy the Nemesis, but I did buy the Manticores at 27.9, and I did buy the Hounds at 25.2, a bit above 25 million, but you can see on this chart that that should actually be an okay price range for especially some Nosik action. So let's take a look here. The Aries still flat at the current range, so sellers coming in at 29 million, buyers at 26.5 million. You know, I'd love to see buyers even lower. I'd love to see a breakdown of this chart heading for 25 million before I make a move on this one. The Basilisk basically recovered a little bit from the 1 year low point, is currently selling for 263 million, buyers still at 233. That's a bit of a margin opening up there. A bit too late, I think, to still buy. Cerberus, same thing, definitely back on its average price for the year, 260 for the sellers, 242 for the buyers, so you're basically too late for the investment. The Crow has quite some pressure on it, data points at 27.5 million, that's interesting, 29 for the sellers, 26 for the buyers. If you want to, yeah, 26 million is definitely below the entire chart. The Crow is still in a good place to try your investments. The Guardian, after reaching its average of 250 million, has to give back a little bit of that price range, but we know that 200 million at the bottom is possible. So 240, almost 237 to 238 for the sellers and 223 for the buyers. Yeah, again, we have to give back a little bit of ground, but you're not in the great buy opportunity territory anymore, unfortunately. The Heretic spiked up quite unexpectedly to 110, 230 million even, but is back on its average. So that gap gets filled in super quickly. 78 million for the sellers now, 69.7 million for the buyers. Yeah, nothing crazy, that's an average. Next up, we've got the Hound. As I've said, I bought those for 25.2 million, now selling for 27 million and 25.2 million pretty much for the buyers. So you can still make that trade if you want to follow me on this one, I think. And I think it's a good one. I personally do think that close to 25 million. You can see the spikes for the Hound here. 45 million, 40 million, 40 million, 40 million, and 40 million not that long ago. So it does happen. I think that one of the parties that may be involved in there is Bombers Bar. You know that they love to fly these covered up stealth bombers, and yet they don't always need a major conflict to risk and sometimes lose one of those big stealth bomber fleets, and that means that people need a replacement and you get this lovely spike. And so I do like the stealth bomber trade, and here for the Hound we have our buy for around 100 million. I only bought 4 of them. I'm not willing to risk billions on this, but I think that should be an easy trade if we do see a spike all of a sudden. The Ishtar next staying flat at 250 million, so again 250 to 240 for the buyers. It's below average for the entire year, but it's not at the 1 year low point. The Manticore is trying to get there, not always succeeding. And so I bought Manticores at 27.9 million, which is definitely below the entire chart. Sellers are at 31 million, buyers are at 26 million. So this is again yet another trade that I think you could do. 26 million on the Manticore chart is really low all of a sudden here. And so again, same thing like with the Hound, spike, 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 spike. 40, 45 million is possible. I think that this is potentially a nice buy, but don't go crazy with the volumes. I always have to tell you guys this, I think, because it is super, super important. Make sure that you make a trade that when the spike happens, you've got a really big chance of unloading everything, taking your profit, so that you're not stuck with, I don't know, hundreds of Manticores all of a sudden. Look at the daily average volumes, make your decision depending on that. For me, it's really easy. Chunks of 100 million, those tend to be my trades. The Munin dropping off a little bit, going back to a less than average price. Let's see how close to 200 million the buyers are at. 238 million for the sellers, 216 for the buyers. A little bit too early for me to call it the buy opportunity, but 216 million, let's see if we can create that somewhere here on the chart, is definitely well below average. And if you have a bit of knowledge, and I'm not exactly sure myself, but it was mentioned that Munin is a doctrine in the Imperium. On action there, this could be a great purchase. Next up we have the Nemesis. So here the Nemesis, I have been trying to buy that. Let's take a quick look at that at 24.5 million. Just that back has never really been broken, but you can tell at the tail end that yet again a bit more pressure coming in now. 29.5 million for the sellers, 25.7 million for the buyers. And right here, is it 24.2? No, it's 24.5. Why is it gone all of a sudden? Did I pick that up since yesterday? It's possible. It's possible that all of a sudden I did pick that up, but then I must have missed a really big swing down, or did I remove my buy order? That's possible as well. I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to check on that. But the Nemesis, I'd love to see the chart yet again reach 25 million. That's where you'll be able to make some nice purchases, I think. Oneros also recovering a little bit back above 200 million, 210 for the sellers, 188 for the buyers. So if you manage to buy here, I think you could have bought for like 170 or something like that pretty easily. You do have a great trade, but here the warning for the volumes must be mentioned, because we're selling 8 of them a day. So if you bought like a dozen of them, you might get stuck with these for a very long time. Purifier after dipping quite low as well. Do I have purifiers on my buying? No. Ooh, should probably have looked into that when we reached 26.5 million. We're still under pressure here at the tail end after trying to bounce back to 30 million. So sellers coming in at 29, buyers coming in at 27. That's just one of them. Then we're talking 26.6 million. That is definitely pretty low on this chart as well. It's not a stealth bomber trade where you can see that 40 million, 1, 2, 3, 4 times has been possible in the past, and now this looks decently interesting, although I think the best buy opportunity was late last month here. Now we've got the Saber. All right, breaking down below its average, definitely close to one year low point a couple of days ago at 67.8 million on average, 70 million for the sellers, 64.6 million for the buyers. One thing that I'm not sure about is how volatile is it, how quickly can you expect a sell opportunity. I think that these are tied to actual wars, really big fleet action. That's where the Sabers come in big numbers and get a prime read quite a lot as well. So highs of 80 to 85 million are possible. Currently buying at 64.6 million. It's your decision. Do you try to grab one for less than 65 million and ride it out? It is definitely something that you could look into. Next up, we've got the Scimitar. Ooh, nice sharp takeoff here from 230 million, currently selling for 271 million. Buyers still at 225 though, so I think that that spike will be very short-lived. And finally, we have the Stiletto that is staying below 30 million ISK, but 29.5 million for the sellers, 27.6 million for the buyers. That's not enough of a margin for me to say that I'm gonna start buying some Stilettos. Next up, the Tech 3 category, 42 minutes 50. Like that. And as always, we'll start with the destroyers. Last week, most of them were doing alright, holding on to 40 million ISK, nothing crazy in the volumes. First thing that I notice here is a bit of pressure on the Confessor and heading back for 35 million, so we're talking 38 million for the sellers, 32 million for the buyers, but volume wise nothing crazy. So I think that this is just some market setting and that we will stay in this range for now. Next up, we've got the Hecate actually going above 40 million ISK. We're talking 41.7 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers. We do have 109 here, but that is normal. It's probably the only one that'll be above 40 million. So I fully expect actually the Confessor to go back up in price a little bit as less supply comes in for Confessors, but even more might come in for the Hecate. It's still not too worrying that you're seeing 100 of them on one sell order for now. The Jackdaw managed to reach 47 million almost, so that was the best selling one. And here now you can see that, well, it doesn't take that much. 49, 16, 16 here, and we're back down to 42.3 million. So still more expensive than the Hecate buyers at 34 million. That's actually a pretty healthy margin. That's quite a surprise to me. 34 million is here on the chart. That's kind of weird. This buy order craze here, and that's actually very understandable. Look at the competition at around 34 million. Lots of people trying to get in on this trade, and that's actually a naturally wide margin, I would say, between sellers and buyers, especially at this height here. So 34 million for the buyers. Well, the Jackdaw, if you want that tech tree investment, this looks interesting to me. Try and grab it for like 34.1 or something like that, and you do have a pretty interesting trade here. With a ship that's still selling for 2 million. That's almost a trade that you could do right away, and I still have 1 hour left at this point. All right, but volume wise here, again, nothing too crazy. And then we have the Zwepel that is staying above 35 million ISK. So 38 million for the sellers, 33 million for the buyers. Definitely nothing too crazy. In fact, a limited amount of sales for sure. Buyers for less than 34 million. That again is opening up a wide margin. Nobody is making Zwepels. Seems to be out of the meta for sure. But at some point, that might actually create an opportunity due to scarcity. So here, the Jackdaw, I like this wide margin, 34 million for the buyers. I think it's never that bad of a purchase. And then the Zwepel, I think it's more of a gamble, but it's the lack of availability here that could make this one interesting for a sudden spike. Interesting situation. We do have these Hecates coming in here. I think that this is going to flatten off, and I think we'll see more confessors in the future. Well, actually, no. We'll see less confessors in the future. I think that can easily recover back to 40 million. And I think that Hecate and the Jackdaw might be set for more supply and thus a pressure to go back to less than 40 million. I think that's, 40 million is going to be what the market will shoot for. But then popularity of the ships, of course, plays a big role as well. For the cruisers, we've got the Legion that's actually breaking out towards 200 million ISK all of a sudden. 195 for the sellers, 165 for the buyers. And the volumes, well, they're actually down a little bit. If you take a look at everything in the last 24 hours, we are left with maybe 5 or 6 sell orders other than that. So that's definitely a bit of scarcity. Increased volumes all of a sudden. Legion is in a sell opportunity. Of course, I would hope that you've bought here for like 130 million. I never had the balls for that because the cruiser market felt like it could be a rigged game as well. The Loki is actually down a little bit for the week, heading back for 200 million ISK, 216 for the sellers, 202 for the buyers. Volume-wise, again, we are going down quite drastically in the availability on the market. Now we've got the Proteus that's also normalizing towards 150, 161 for the sellers, 147 for the buyers. Again, volume-wise, it's not that much, but it's definitely better than the previous two. And then finally we have the Tengu that is again at 175 here now all of a sudden. So here we get 175 for the sellers, 144 for the buyers. And availability, well, we don't see hundreds of Tengus in a single sell order, but the availability is quite decent. Yeah, it's basically that Legion. This is all that's there. That's not that much. That's all of a sudden driving the price up quite a lot. And then the Loki has more availability, but it is by far the most popular. No, I'm sorry. Here is the Loki. Has a bit more availability, exactly, but it is by far the most expensive and most popular one as well. So it really does its own thing a little bit. That Legion spike, though, quite unexpected, very interesting. It is a Gnostic doctrine. That is absolutely the case. So perhaps some massive buying is happening there as well. All right, that's it for the tech tree market. Feels a bit risky to me, but a couple of the destroyers might be in an interesting place if you want to bet in that tech tree market right now. Next up for the extra product at 48.15. I'm going to go over the mining ships. I think it could be interesting. It's been a while since we checked those. So let's go take a look at them. Ships, I think we get mining barges first of all. So let's start with the Tech 1s. Here is the coveted price. That's of course Tech 1 ship, mineral prices to a 1-year low point. That is pretty obvious. So coveted selling for 18 million ISK, buyers coming in at 17 million ISK. Super cheap to get into mining at this point as well. But but the returns are quite low as well. The Procurer, same thing here, of course, playing with that 1 year low point, well below the average, well below 15 million at this point, 14 million for the sellers, 12.6 million for the buyers, super cheap for these ships. Then we've got the Retriever, same thing, 1 year low point, 16.8 million for the sellers and 16 million for the buyers. Why could this be interesting? But that is a big gamble to take. We know that I think if you watch Talking Stations on the Imperium Twitch channel, there was one with CCP Fozzy. Was it there? I think it was there that CCP Fozzy did say that the Rorqual is on the radar. Nothing concrete, definitely no dates, nothing like that, but that the general vibe that it is too powerful, it is mining too much, that is on the radar. And so that's the big gamble to take. Do you think that CCP at some point is going to come in with some serious Rorqual nerfs, perhaps some more anomaly nerfs or something like that? Then this could be interesting, of course, considering these 1 year low points for these mining barges. Next up, we have the Tech 2 versions. Let's take a look at those. I think we'll start with the Skiff. That's, I think, the smallest one. And here, I think that it's starting to be really interesting because that's also 1 year low point, currently selling for 212 million ISK, buyers coming in at 201 million ISK for the Skiff. And yeah, 1 year low point yet again. Mackinac, actually not, still below average for the year, but the 1 year low point was in November here when we reached 230 million ISK. Did we see a volume reaction to that? Not really, kind of strange, but alright, Mackinac now for 260 million, buyers at 245. It's definitely still a step up from Tech 1, bit expensive, but we saw here that buy opportunity, very interesting. And then finally we have the Hulk, that is, yes, at the 1 year low point yet again, just crawling out of that in the last couple of days, but for less than 300 million ISK, buyers at 280. That does seem pretty interesting. It is a very big gamble to take if you want to see that as an investment, hoping on a CCP nerf of the Rorqual to make a comeback for these ships. But I think it is possible. I mean, this is the main line of the mining progression. Basically, we're talking start with the Tech 1s, go towards a Coveter if you want. Most people, I think I did Procure Retriever, and then I definitely skilled up straight to the Hulk. And at the moment, I think the Mackinac is also still very solo friendly. But all of these are at really low prices. Mackinac not so much, but look at the Hulk, look at the Skiff, and all of the Tech 1s are super cheap at the moment. But they are the path that most miners have to take at some point. And at the moment, they are basically overshadowed by the Rorqual, which I can't really show you because I don't think anything here is going to be for sale. I might check it. Let's take a quick look. Rorqual in ships. Where is it? Rorqual right here. Let's take a look at that. You can clearly tell that, you know, it's not here. About 1.9 billion 10 jumps out or something like that. People are trying to buy them for around 2 billion ISK as well. They're pretty low on the average on the chart, so it does look like in nullsec these are trading for pretty cheap prices at the moment. Also 1 year low points at the moment, but this is definitely the ship that is overshadowing everything. And in high sec, it is the Orca, which we definitely have to check as well, of course, as part of the mining ships. That is also at a 1 year low point at the moment. But so what you could expect, if they nerf the Rorqual, if we see some war or something like that that is bringing back minerals, then the Orca, which is at a 1 year low point and currently selling for around 650 million ISK, might definitely make a comeback. And if there is a need to bring back more of the other ships as well, perhaps they could devise some sort of a mechanic that basically means that the Rorqual is more of a bonus ship, just like the Orca, and that the more mining barges and exhumers you bring to the fleet, the better the whole fleet will do. Something like that might actually drive the individual Rorqual numbers down and bring these ships back. Something like that might be on the radar for CCP. Then yeah, these all look really interesting. The Orca, again, also 1 year low point. That is of course due to the Tech 1 market. 644 million for the sellers, 618 million for the buyers. It is still super popular despite these 1 year low prices. So it's not a sign of lack of popularity. I know that from my BBC business. I make 3 of these every week and they still sell at a massive premium. That's a big ISK maker for me. Yeah, despite that, I think that Hulk and Skiff, especially for these Tech 2 exhumers to be at 1 year low points here as well, that is very potentially interesting, but you are making a pretty big gamble if you again are expecting a Rorcal nerf to make the difference, to bring those ships up and to make you those profits. So the general vibe in the mining ships is 1 year low prices. Is that a bit surprising? Well, for the Tech ones, no, of course, the minerals are at 1 year low points as well. But for the Tech 2s, that is perhaps a little bit surprising that these are also going for this really cheap price at the moment. Even the Rorcal on the averages on the chart was trending very low. And that despite the fact that there's so much mining going on in the game that nobody can really follow. Who the hell is still buying these? You'd either see these completely crater down. It's in a strange position in my opinion. I do think that CCP is going to be looking into that, and that perhaps at some point we'll see some changes done to mining that might shake all of that up. And then of course right now we might be in the perfect storm with super cheap minerals, super cheap resources, and those ships at 1 year low points. Might be the right time to perhaps do some smart buying as well. Who knows? That's of course the sandbox for you. It all remains a big gamble, and nobody knows for sure what the future will bring. But I think that perhaps a last look at my ticker that might be of interest to you guys as well. So construction blocks, I'm trying to buy that for less than 10k. Hasn't worked out. That buy order is still up, and probably, unless the market drops off all of a sudden, will not be doable. I'm keeping it there because if you look at this entire chart, if it does succeed, I'm like 99% sure that I've got a good trade. The crystalline carbonites, I bought these for 146, currently already selling for 170. I think it's too early to sell, but that is looking like it could become a pretty good trade if I look at this entire chart yet again. Then hounds at 25.2. Yep, I bought these. You can clearly tell that the buyers have gone below that. You can tell on the chart here as well that we are playing with 1 year lows. I think it's a good purchase that will make me some profits. Manticore 27.9 million, same thing. Buyers are down to 26 million, so you can do even better than my trade, but I still think that considering this entire chart is above 30 million, that's a very good buy, and that potentially will make some nice ISK from that. Nemesis 24.5, I'm still gonna stick with the story because I'm not sure that I haven't been able to make that purchase just yet, but the buyer order is up. Nuclear reactors, same thing. Down well below 90k. I bought for less than 90k and it's going even lower, so here there's definitely potential for an even better trade, and I think I'll maybe try to lower my average on this one as well. Strontium, that's a super old investment that is definitely not paying off, so the opposite is possible as well. That is actually reaching a 1 year low point yet again, so I'm stuck with this until CCP finally does something for strontium clad trades. And then the tungsten carbide trade is one that I made successfully, so I shouldn't really cover those. At some point I'm going to remove these successful trades, but I want to keep them for a couple of weeks, just that so you guys can pick up on what I've actually been doing and what has succeeded, and something like that which has definitely failed. But yep, there you go guys, that's going to be it for ETH Talk this week. I'm not yet sure what I would buy this week myself, but we'll see, and as always I'll keep you guys up to date in the next one. Thank you very much for watching guys, and I'll see you guys next time.